The secret prison the government says doesn't exist. The metal door slammed behind Agent Mark Reeves with a thunderous echo that shook the air. He spun around, flashlight trembling in his hand, but the door had already locked itself. No handle, no keypad, nothing. The hum of machinery surrounded him. A red light flickered above the only security camera in the room, its lens shifting to follow his every move. Then a calm, robotic voice echoed through the speaker overhead. "Welcome to Facility E-9, it said slowly. "You were not expected." Mark's chest tightened. He tried his radio. Static. No signal. The air felt heavy, recycled, too clean. He stepped backward, his boots scraping against the steel floor, until he heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from the vent above him. Something or someone was inside the walls. The voice returned, colder this time. "Agent Reeves, you shouldn't have come here." Then the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. Only the hum remained, low, vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat. Mark froze, hearing footsteps just a few feet away, though he was certain he'd come in alone. His flashlight flickered back to life, and for half a second he saw it. A face behind the glass, pale and still, staring back at him from another room. Then it vanished. He shouted, "Who's there?" but no one answered. The only reply was the slow creak of a metal door sliding open at the far end of the hall. He hesitated for a moment, then followed. Hours earlier, the day had begun like any other at the Federal Bureau headquarters in D.C. Mark was a quiet man, not one for rumors, but had spent years chasing one story that wouldn't die. Whispers about a prison that wasn't supposed to exist. It had no name, no location, no official record. Yet detainees who supposedly vanished were sometimes mentioned in old reports. Each reference ended the same way. Case sealed, national security order. That morning, he found an unmarked folder waiting on his desk. Inside were 6 photographs, aerial shots of facility hidden deep within the Virginia mountains, surrounded by electric fencing and marked property of Energy Department. But the blueprint said otherwise. Buried beneath the surface was a massive structure labeled E-9. No one in his division had ever heard of it. When Mark took the photos to his supervisor, the man's reaction told him everything. His face went pale. "Reeves," he said firmly, "whatever that is, it's above your clearance. Drop it. That's an order." But Mark couldn't let it go. 2 nights later, he drove to the coordinates printed on the last photo, 37.653 N, 80.719 W, deep in the Appalachian Range. The road ended at a lock gate and a faded sign that read, "Restricted Federal Property." The rest of the way, he traveled on foot. By midnight, fog rolled in, thick enough to swallow the trees. He followed a dirt path that led to a cluster of abandoned warehouses. Everything looked deserted, until he noticed fresh tire marks in the mud. Nearby, a rusted elevator door sat half buried in the ground, its keypad still glowing faint red. The numbers 1391 were scratched into the frame. His heart pounded. Could this be it? He entered the code written on a torn slip of paper inside the folder, 7319. The ground trembled. The doors opened, revealing a narrow shaft leading downward into darkness. Mark hesitated for a long moment, then stepped inside. The elevator creaked and began its slow descent, the numbers ticking down, B1, B2, B3, until it stopped at B7. When the doors opened, he found himself in a silent hallway lined with cameras and old computers. Then the door behind him slammed shut. The elevator lights went dark. Now, standing in that cold chamber, Agent Reeves realized the rumors were true. The government really did have a secret prison, one they would never admit existed. But before he could take another step, the red light above the camera turned green. A hidden door slid open behind him. From the darkness, a voice whispered his name. He turned slowly toward the sound, and froze when he saw who was standing there. The flashlight slipped from Mark's hand and rolled across the steel floor, its beam shaking wildly until it landed on a pair of boots. Military boots, polished but covered in dust. The figure standing in front of him stepped into the light. For a second, Mark couldn't breathe. It was Agent Cole Henderson, his old partner. The same man who had disappeared 2 years ago while investigating the same rumor about a black site. Everyone at the bureau had assumed Cole was dead. "Cole," Mark's voice cracked. "How are you?" Cole raised a hand. Cut him off. "You shouldn't have come here, Mark. They're watching us right now." Mark took a shaky step forward. "Where have you been? What is this place?" Cole looked around nervously. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale, his beard unkempt. "Facility E-9, he whispered. "They call it a containment center, but it's not for criminals. It's for secrets. People who saw too much. People like me." Before Mark could respond, the overhead speakers buzzed. "Agents Reeves and Henderson," the voice said. "Return to your quarters." Cole grabbed Mark's arm. "Don't say a word. There are microphones everywhere. Follow me." They moved quickly down the hall, past rows of reinforced doors with small, fog windows. Behind one, Mark saw movement, a hand pressed against the glass. Someone was inside, whispering something he couldn't hear. Cole stopped in front of the maintenance panel and pulled it open, revealing a narrow crawl space behind the wall. "This way," he said. They crawled through the vent until they reached a small room filled with flickering monitors. The screen showed surveillance feeds, hallways, cells, labs, even rooms filled with paperwork. On one screen, Mark froze. It showed himself, hours earlier, driving through the mountains toward the site. "They were tracking me," he whispered. Cole nodded. "They've been watching you since the day you opened that folder." He turned one monitor toward Mark. "Do you remember this?" It showed a man being escorted down a hallway by guards. A tall man, handcuffed, head bowed. Mark recognized him instantly. That's Deputy Director Harris, but he's supposed to be on assignment overseas? Yeah, they tell the public he's running operations abroad. In reality, he's been here for months. Cole's eyes darted toward the door. "Anyone who learns about E-9 ends up here. That's why you need to leave now." Mark's head spun. "How? There's no way out." "There is," Cole said quietly, "but it's not easy. And once you go for it, you don't stop." Before Mark could answer, a loud alarm blared through the intercom. Red lights flashed. The robotic voice returned, colder this time. "Unauthorized movement detected in Section Delta." Cole's face went white. "They found us." The door to the surveillance room slid open with metallic hiss. Two soldiers in gray uniforms stepped in, holding rifles. "Step away from the monitors," one ordered. Mark raised his hand slowly. Cole did the same, but his right hand was shaking, reaching for something behind his back. Mark's eyes widened when he saw what it was. A small black keycard. Cole threw it toward him. "Run, Mark. Take it." The soldiers fired a stun round. Sparks flashed. Cole fell backward against the wall, his body jerking from the impact. Mark caught the card and bolted to a side door, the alarm wailing above him. He sprinted through the corridor, hearing footsteps behind him, echoing. Closer and closer. As he reached the intersection, he swiped the key card at a locked door. A green light blinked. Access granted. The door slid open, revealing a long, dimly lit passage. He darted inside, heart hammering, but before he could close it, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Mark spun around and froze. It wasn't a guard. It was another prisoner, pale, trembling, eyes wide with fear. The man's voice shook as he whispered, "They're not just holding people down here, they're experimenting on them." Before Mark could react, the lights went red again. A heavy metal gate began to drop from the ceiling, cutting off the passage. He shoved the man forward, trying to squeeze through, but it was too late. The gate slammed shut between them, trapping Mark inside the corridor and leaving the terrified prisoner on the other side, pounding on the steel wall as the floor beneath him began to tremble. Then came the sound, deep, mechanical, like something enormous waking up beneath the facility, and a voice over the speaker said, "Containment breach detected in cell block 7. The ground shook so hard that Mark nearly fell. Dust rained down from the ceiling as sirens blared across the underground prison. The red lights flickered wildly, and a computerized voice repeated over and over, "Containment breach. All personnel report to secure zones." Mark pressed himself against the cold wall, gasping for breath. The gate behind him sealed completely, locking him inside the narrow corridor. Through the small window in the metal wall, he could still see the prisoner, the same pale man from before, screaming silently, pounding the glass until his hands bled. Then, in a flash of light, his image distorted on the other side of the window, like static on a broken screen. And just like that, he was gone. Mark stumbled backward, staring in shock. "What is this place?" he whispered. He turned down the passage, clutching the keycard Cole had given him. The floor vibrated again, a deep, rumbling sound like an engine buried under miles of steel. He reached another door. It had no label, just a single keypad glowing faint blue. He swiped the keycard. The light turned green, and the door hissed open. Inside was a long laboratory filled with glass walls, metal tables, and glowing monitors. Empty cells lined the sides, each marked with number: Subject 04, Subject 07, Subject 12. But what made Mark's stomach twist was the thick cables running into each cell from the ceiling, as if the building itself was connected to whatever was inside. He stepped closer to one cell and froze. Inside was a man hooked to machines, his body weak, eyes barely open. A label above the glass read, H. Henderson. Mark's breath caught. Cole's last name. "No," he whispered. "That can't be." But it was. Cole Henderson, the same man who had helped him minutes ago, was here, motionless, trapped inside the cell. His heartbeat flickered across a nearby monitor, slow and faint. Then Mark noticed something even more disturbing. The screen above it displayed a feed, showing Cole talking to him in the surveillance room earlier. That meant what Mark had seen wasn't real. It was a projection, a recording, maybe even an AI simulation. The real Cole had never escaped. He'd been here the entire time. Mark stumbled backward, feeling the room spin. Suddenly, another voice came through the intercom, but this one was a robotic. It was calm, almost human. "Agent Reeves," it said softly, "you've gone too far. You've seen what wasn't meant to be seen." "Who are you?" Mark yelled. "What is this place?" "Facility E-9," the voice replied, "was built to protect this country from threats the public cannot handle. Sometimes those threats are human. Sometimes they're not." Mark's eyes darted across the room. The cells, the humming machines, the power running beneath the floor. None of this felt like any normal prison. "What are you doing to these people?" he demanded. "Testing," the voice said simply. "Behavioral, biological, psychological. All in the name of national security. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand," Mark shot back. "You're torturing innocent people and hiding behind a government badge." Silence followed, then a low laugh, dark and cold. "Innocent? Is that what you think they are?" Before Mark could answer, the lights dimmed. The cell doors began unlocking one by one with heavy clanks. The hum grew louder, almost deafening. A red warning flashed on the monitors. "Security override. All containment units open." The air filled with the sound of chains dropping and footsteps moving inside the dark cells. Mark grabbed his flashlight and turned toward the exit, but the door had already sealed behind him. He was trapped. From a far end of the room, one of the glass doors slid open with a hiss. A figure stepped out, tall, shaking, face hidden in shadow. Its hospital gown was torn, its eyes unfocused. Then another door opened, and another. Dozens of prisoners, dazed, confused, whispering, began stepping out, each one moving toward him. But their movements were wrong, unnatural. Their heads tilted at sharp angles, their hands twitching as if they'd forgotten how to be human. Mark shouted, "Stay back!" But none of them listened. The hum in the air grew into a roar. Then one of the prisoners looked straight at him, eyes pitch black, and said in a low, trembling voice, "You shouldn't have come here, Agent Reeves. Now you can never leave." Before Mark could move, the power cut out completely. The emergency lights flashed once, then died. And in that moment of total darkness, the sound of footsteps started rushing toward him. The lights snapped back on for just a second, enough for Mark to see them. Dozens of figures in torn uniforms filled the hallway, moving like shadows that didn't belong to their bodies. Their eyes reflected the flickering red light, blank and cold. Then, as quickly as the light returned, it vanished again, plunging the room into total darkness. Mark ran. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The key card in his hand was slick with sweat as he fumbled for a door, any door, but every one he reached was sealed shut. Behind him, metal scraped on the floor. A whisper echoed through blackness, soft and broken. "Stay with us, Agent Reeves. Everyone stays." He turned a corner and found a staircase leading down. The air grew colder the further he descended, and the hum beneath the facility grew louder, deeper, as if the earth itself were breathing. He reached the bottom and stepped into a wide chamber filled with humming generators and glowing tubes that ran along the ceiling. In the center of the room stood a massive control console surrounded by glass screens. On them, rows of numbers and names scrolled endlessly, files of missing people, coded with the initials E-9. Mark's stomach twisted. Every name here had been wiped from official records. Every face belonged to someone the government had said never existed. He approached the console. The main screen flickered, showing a live camera feed, an overhead view of the facility from above. It wasn't just underground. It stretched for miles, multiple levels, hundreds of rooms, and on every level, people. Locked, monitored, experimented on. "Now you see," the voice said again, echoing from unseen speakers. It was the same voice that had spoken to him since he arrived. Calm, controlled, emotionless. Facility E-9 was built to preserve order. "We contain those who threaten it." "Threaten it?" Mark shouted. "These are innocent people." The voice paused. Then it said, "Were you innocent when you came here, Agent Reeves? You trespassed. You accessed classified information. You endangered lives. By our law, you are now part of the system." Before Mark could reply, a hiss of air came from behind him. He spun around. A chamber door had opened. Inside was a single chair surrounded by wires and sensors. On a small screen next to it flashed one word, transfer. He realized what they meant to do. They weren't just containing people. They were turning them into something else. Copies. Simulations. Like Cole, Mark's pulse quickened. He began typing furiously on the console, searching for a shutdown option. File after file flashed past. Records of vanished agents, journalists, whistleblowers, all tagged E-9. His hands trembled as he found the system root labeled Core Interface. Password required, the terminal said. Then, to his shock, a whisper came through his earpiece, the same one he thought had gone dead hours ago. It was faint, but it was a voice he recognized. "Mark, it's Cole." Mark froze. "Cole? You're alive?" "I don't have time. Listen to me. The password is revelation. Type it. Now." Mark entered the word. The console beeped once, and the system unlocked. Across every monitor, the phrase "manual override engaged" flashed in bright red. Sirens blared. The walls began to vibrate. "What did you do?" the calm voice thundered. Mark shouted, "I'm ending this." Alarm screamed. The monitors flickered and shut down one by one. Steam hissed from vents, and the lights above him turned white, then red, then went black entirely. For a moment, everything went still. Then, slowly, a new sound filled the silence, a rising hum, deeper than before. The floor beneath him split open, revealing an enormous shaft filled with tangled machinery and blinking red lights that stretched endlessly downward. From deep below, a low growl echoed up the tunnel, mechanical and alive. Mark stepped back, shielding his face from the burst of heat. "What is that?" he shouted. The voice returned, now trembling for the first time. "You've released the core." "You fool! It was never meant to be opened." From the depths, a column of red light shot upward, shaking the entire facility. Metal twisted, and alarms wailed as sparks rained from the ceiling. The walls began to crack. Mark sprinted toward the stairs, clutching the key card, but half the floor collapsed behind him. He reached the upper level just as the elevator lights flickered on again. The doors opened, miraculously still working. He dove inside and hit the up button. The elevator lurched upward violently, shaking as debris crashed down around it. As it rose, he could hear the robotic voice breaking apart beneath the static. "Facility E. 9, integrity failure, evacuate. The numbers climbed, B5, B3, B1, until finally the elevator slammed to a stop. The doors opened to a narrow hallway leading to daylight far ahead. Mark stumbled out, lungs burning, the mountain wind hitting his face for the first time in hours. The facility behind him groaned as the ground trembled again. A deep rumble echoed under the earth. He turned to run toward the trees, then stopped. On the hillside above, a dozen black SUVs were parked. Men in suits stepped out, their faces expressionless, their hands on their earpieces. The one in front looked directly at him and said into his radio, "We found him." Mark's heart pounded as he raised his hand slowly, the sun burning through the fog. Behind him, the mountain roared and collapsed in on itself. The lead agent lowered his sunglasses, staring at Mark. "Agent Reeves," he said calmly, "Facility E-9 doesn't exist, and you were never here." A helicopter rose behind them, its blades cutting through the silence. The men began to move toward him. Mark took one last glance at the smoking crater where the prison had been, then ran into the woods as the radio crackled behind him. "Target is fleeing. Do not let him reach the surface road." The chase began, and somewhere deep beneath the earth, in the ruins of E-9, a single monitor blinked back to life. "Status. System rebooting."